Hello, good day to everyone, and I welcome you to the another episode on Moldflow's tips and workflow. I hope this time my voice is loud and clear and crisp. I try to improve upon it. If not, probably give us the feedback and I will try to improve upon upcoming episodes. So what we are going to discuss in today's session is how to select the elements, particularly in one selection row, and it becomes very easy when we have a CAD body splitted, and it becomes easy to do so. Like I select one element and then I go and say that hey, select onto the same surface. It goes and selects the elements on that particular surface very easily, right? But what happens if I try to do the same thing over here? Like I want to create like a flow leaders, I may not able to create these, or I may not get a proper align elements which I can try to increase the thickness, or probably I want to do some extrude command of for this set of elements. And you are middle of the analysis and suddenly you want to do those things, right? It becomes very, you know, difficult situations. Well, if you have Fusion 360 installed on your machine and the Moldflow on the same machine, you can quickly edit the geometry and come back and do the flow leader, you know, flow leader or flow deflector or whatsoever you want to do for the element selections. Of course, flow leaders and deflectors can be created out of into the Fusion 360 as well. But let's give a try how we can split the faces, particularly, which will help us to select the set of elements. I'm into the Moldflow inside 2023 and I'm going to push this geometry from Synergy to Fusion 360. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the geometry. I went to the geometry tab and click the Fusion 360. This buttons gets highlighted only if you have the Fusion 360 installed on your machine. So if it is not getting highlighted, that makes that its Fusion is not available over there. Okay, so I'm going to select a geometry over here. Let me do it again. So I selected the Fusion 360 here and the geometry gets automatically selected, and I'm going to push and say apply. So it opens the Fusion 360 in the background, and let's see over there. I'll pause for here for a few seconds by the time the Fusion 360 gets invoked and the geometry is transferred. As you can see over here, I have, here you go. We have now the geometry in the Fusion 360. Need not to close your Moldflow, keep it open because we are going to push back this geometry again into the Moldflow. So we are into the Fusion 360, and what we are going to do is we are now going to create a splitting of surfaces, or sorry, we are going to split the surfaces for the flow leaders and deflectors. As I mentioned, that flow leaders and deflectors can be created in the Fusion 360 itself. So very quickly I'm going to select this face and say create a sketch, and while creating the sketch I'm just creating a very simple sketch over here. Let's see, and take this point and try to see, get the hook onto the one of the point and just extending it by 90 degree, and then again I'm going to create another same line, hook on to this point, and I will say that I want to create the line of the same. Okay, done. Say finish the sketch. Now I'm going to use these two lines to split this face as well as onto the back side. So I'm going to go into the modify, say split face, and I'm going to select this face and also the back face of this geometry. So two faces I selected. Keep the splitting tool extension on. This will avoid any errors that will come into it. So I'm going to select this one, and you can see that now I got a splitting tool activated, and it's just going to trim my surface. Hit OK, and you can see that it has been trimmed up from both the surfaces. Why it's needed? Because while we creating the flow leaders and deflectors, we are going to assign the equals surf thickness on the either side of the part. If you want that thickness to be raised only on one side, probably you can just go and do the splitting only for one side of the body. So, sorry, I mistakenly select the faces. So I'm going to select again this face as well as onto the back side face, and select the splitting tool. Now you cannot able to see the splitting tool because the sketch by default gets hidden after the first command. So you need to go and put it into the view command so that we will able to see those sketches. Hit OK, and you can see now I have split both the surfaces, and a good split has been created onto the both of the surfaces. And since we are now in connection with the Moldflow, we are going to push this geometry again back to the Moldflow. So go back and say return. So we are returned back, and it allows to select my boundary conditions including the material and the gate location. So there is no change in the gate location, but you can see now the geometry that has been updated has now splitted faces. So let's go and see whether the mesh that would be created will have align elements over here. So I'm going to create quickly a dual domain mesh over here, and see if it can create. So all of your mesh settings, everything remains intact as you have set it into the earlier study. So the mesh has been completed now, and you can, if you want, you can just close the Fusion, so it will just save you a bit of computation power for you. And let's see whether the elements are that newly created are falling in line with that one. And as you can see now, I can clearly see a bifurcations or neat line being created out of here, and I can do the selection as I need it for this, particularly for the creation of the flow leaders or deflector, whatever I want to create out of it. And when I'm selecting carefully so that the elements doesn't get selected out of the line, and when I'm selecting, it also gets selected on the other side of the component as well. So let's see where, and you can superimpose your CAD and see that the elements that have been created or that has been selected are completely aligned to it. And on to the back side, just select the very similar elements, and you can see that for the rest of the surface as well, or the face, the elements are falling in line with that the created splitter face. Here I have created a coarse mesh, but if you want, you can create a much finer mesh and the elements will be much better aligned as compared to what you see. But this is the best way. I can say that if you face any challenge of creating the flow leaders or deflectors and you want to select the set of elements which are not falling in line, you can split the face, come back, your geometry remains intact. Oh, sorry, boundary conditions remains intact. Even if you model the fit systems or cooling channels, it remains intact. I hope this tip and workflow would be useful for optimizing your analysis as well as for the geometry. Thank you for your time, and talk to you again in the next episode. Take care. Bye.